Rebbe Leib Saras. One of the great Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov, Rebbe Leib Saras, was famous all over the world as a holy tzaddik. Rebbe Leib was a tremendous Talmid Chacham, and he contained his life with extreme holiness. Many times he appeared not to be a person, but a Malach of Hashem. There are many remarkable stories relating to the name of this holy tzaddik. Most of Rebbe Leib's actions were done secretly. He was always dressed in simple clothes, and ordinary people he met could not begin to imagine that he was actually a hidden tzaddik. From the home of Zvilin, a man who rented a small inn from the non-Jewish landowner, he can hear a loud sobbing and heart-filled screams. Zvilin's wife sat in the corner of a large room, tears streaming down her face. Her young children, seeing her mother's distress, cried along with her. "Father, Father, come home!" they cried. Just yesterday, the landowner's servant had arrived at Zvilin's home and informed him that in no circumstances that the landowner could wait no longer for the payment he was owed. In front of the children's eyes, Zvulun was dragged out into the wagon and quickly taken off to the landowner's palace. Zvulun's wife understood all too well that what was waiting for her husband. The landowner was known to be hateful and cruel. He would throw people into prison cells in the dungeon without any hesitation. She sat and cried terribly, concerned for her husband and wondering what she and her children would do without him. And then suddenly, as if out of nowhere, the holy Rebbe Leib appeared there to their door. "Do not worry," he said to the woman and her children. "I will immediately make my way to the landowner's estate. I promise you that Zvilin will be released from prison before nightfall." Zvilin's wife could not believe her good fortune, and she thanked the Rebbe. Rebbe Leib hurried out to the estate and was anxious to get Zvilin out of the dreary prison cell. When the landowner saw Rebbe Leib standing before him, he was taken aback by his shining and powerful voice. Rebbe Leib put a sum of money down on the table and said, "Here's the entire sum that your tenants owe you. Now send your servants with me to release him from prison." With trembling hands, the landowner rang a bell summoning his servants. When they arrived, the landowner said, "Free the Jew at once!" The joy and diligence of the family, Zvilin was taken home a short while later. Rebbe Leib continued on his way, working on behalf of his beloved people, helping out whoever necessary. For all of his acts of chesed, Rebbe Leib indeed large amounts of money, and so he traveled from place to place collecting donations. One day, Rebbe Leib arrived in the city of Konotz, dressed as a merchant. He went to the nearby base midrash and stood off to the side, davening with much favor and kavanah. Ziv, a wealthy man who lived in the city, stood and watched Rebbe Leib in amazement. He immediately understood that this person was no simple merchant, but a great tzaddik. As soon as Rebbe Leib had finished davening, Zvi approached him and said, "I would like to invite you to stay at my home as long as you remain in our city." Rebbe Leib noticed the man seemed to be a fine yid and Yirat Shamayim. He agreed to stay at his home. Zvi tended his guest with much honor and respect. He provided him with a comfortable room, satisfying meals. He himself tended to his guest's needs and did not allow anyone else to do it for him. All the while, Rebbe Leib was sure that this was Zvi's way of earning a livelihood, and that a bill would soon be forthcoming. He stayed for several weeks until he had finished all he had sent out to accomplish in Kozitz. When he was about to leave, he approached his host and said, "Please give me the bill. I would like to pay you for your service." "Chas v'shalom!" exclaimed Zvi. I will not take any payment for anything. I hosted the Rebbe with pleasure, and reward for serving someone is so holy, it is enough for me. Rebbe could not believe what he was hearing. I thought this was some kind of service that I would be able to pay for, he said. Rebbe pleaded with Zvi to accept some payment, but Zvi refused. In the end, he suggested, my shop is not far from here. I would appreciate if the Rebbe comes and buys something from it, so I will be blessed in business. That for me will be sufficient payment. Rebbe agreed, and the two men made their way to Zvi's shop. The shop was large and spacious. Many shoppers were milling around and filling their bags. Rebbe was pleased to see that Zvi was the owner of a successful business. He browsed around for several minutes. Suddenly, he spotted a shelf full of fine, delicate vessels. He picked one up and figured an old set. Then he said, no, this is not the merchandise I was looking for, and made his way to the shelf filled with cups. Perhaps the Rebbe needs some new cups. Look, these are tall and pretty, suggested Zvi. When Leib examined the cups, he said, no, this is not what I was looking for. At that point, Zvi could not believe what was happening. He knew that he sold good merchandise and could not imagine why Rebbe kept repeating that the merchandise was of low quality. Rebbe continued to walk around constantly, touching things and muttering, this is not what merchandise. The other stranger in disbelief. He had shining contents, and something about him seemed holy. His behavior was strange. Rebbe finally finished serving the entire shop and then turned towards the exit without buying anything. But just as he was able to leave, he noticed a pair of cheap gloves and picked them up happily and exclaimed, this is good merchandise. At this point, Zvi could not help but wonder what was going on. Why did Rebbe need these cheap gloves? But still, he was happy that the Holy Tzaddik was at least buying something in his shop. He was sure that his purchase would bring him much blessing. But all of a sudden, he heard the Tzaddik say, it is indeed good merchandise, but not for me. And with that, he left the shop. Zvi did not question the Rebbe's strange behavior. He accompanied him to the outskirts of the city, when they parted with much warmth. Only once he had returned home did he find out that his guest had been none other than the holy Rebbe Sarais. Months passed in the city of Karaps. It was thermal. The Russian army was on its way to war, and they had stopped in Kanaps for a while. The soldiers barged into the shops and houses, and they wished demanding property and goods. The frightened residents hid in their cellars. Some escaped to the nearby forest, where they hid among the trees. Finally, after a while, the soldiers left the city, and the residents were able to return to their homes. They found their shops, Valdums, and their home in a mess. And then a rumor spread through the city. Only Zvi's shop had been left untouched. Everything had remained the way it was. Within no time, the residents in the city had gathered to Zvi's shop. In the amazing sight, nothing had been touched in the entire shop. Zvi was just as amazed at the others. He could not understand why his shop had not been spared. And then suddenly he remembered. Rebbe Saras visited my shop several months ago. He touched all of my goods and said, no, this is not good merchandise. Could this be the reason that the soldiers did not enter my shop, he wondered? And then suddenly he remembered the gloves that the tzaddik had held and said, this is good merchandise. He hurried over to the shelf, and indeed the gloves were nowhere to be found. It was clear that the Rebbe's blessing had saved Zvi's shop from being destroyed by the soldiers. Rebbe's many Talmidim followed the Rebbe's ways in performing holy acts secretly. They did not have the privilege of being able to travel to their Rebbe, since he was always traveling and hardly ever at home. Indeed, Rebbe himself would travel to his Talmidim and teach them Torah and avodas Hashem.